It's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am, today. And we are excited to talk about your chapter in the book, Perspectives on Culture. So, to start with, ma'am, could you please tell us a little about yourself, your life journey, your education, and your profession?
Hello everyone, my name is Dayeeta Patikar. I have recently completed my master's degree from the World University, Guwahati, and I am also a silver medalist in English. My academic interests focuses on cultural studies, philosophy, and literature as a whole. I also enjoy learning more about culture and traditions from different parts of the world. And I try to connect literature with the larger questions of life, identity, and culture.
Okay, that sounds interesting, ma'am. Can you briefly explain what your chapter is mainly about?
Okay, so the title of my chapter is Whispers of the Voice, a comparative study of silence, stillness, and sacred space in Japanese and Indian aesthetics. So the chapter looks at how the concept of silence, the concept of stillness are understood in both Japanese traditions and Indian traditions. Because what I have observed in learning about both these cultures is that in both the cultures, silence is not just simply an absence, like what we generally perceive about it. It is seen as a meaningful presence, whether it's a calm space of a garden in Japan or a deep Indian or a deep quietness of an Indian temple. The silence becomes a way to connect with the self, with others, and with the divine.
Okay, ma'am, that's nice. Ma'am, would you like to tell us like what inspired you or motivated you to choose this very particular topic?
Yeah, I chose this topic because I feel that today's world is filled with endless noise. And when I am talking about noise, it is not just the physical noise that we hear, physical form of noise, but also in a very more deeper and metaphorical way. Because the conflicts, the wars, the constant unrest that is going around in the world, it creates a kind of mental and emotional noise that leaves us, in a state of confusion, we can say. So in such a situation or in such a climate, often we forget how powerful silence can be. So when I studied Japanese and Indian traditions as I was preparing for this chapter, I realized that both these cultures treat silence not just as emptiness, but it is something more positive, which is something more creative, we can say, and deeply spiritual. So that inspired me to explore more about it because I feel that this is something we all need more of in our lives. The concept of silence, the concept of stillness. Why we need it for more peace, to get more clarity in our lives, and for our both personal, physical or mental or spiritual healing.
Okay, ma'am, that's nice. Uh, and how do you see your chapter connecting with the broader theme of culture? That's the main theme of this book.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, as I have mentioned, that silence or stillness, that both this concept I have focused more on my chapter. So they are deeply shaped by culture. I'll give you an example. Like for example, in Japan, silence is central to a tea ceremony. They are known for their tea ceremony. So I'll give a very short description of how this in their works, the concept of silence works in their tradition. So during this tea ceremony, the host and the guests, often sit together in near complete silence, paying attention to the smallest details like the sound of the water boiling or the movement of the bamboo utensils. I'm sure you must be familiar that they use a kind of a bamboo whisk to whisk the green tea. So the sounds, the quietness and the environment, it creates a sense of mindfulness, a sense of peace in that moment. Similarly, silence is also reflected in their haiku poetry, where pauses or spaces carry deeper meaning. Similarly, in India, if we look at silence comes to yoga in temple or a temple where which is designed for quiet meditation and in the discipline of mona or mona or we can say sacred silence in presence of the divine. So this example shows how silence is not just action but it is a cultural expression tied to beauty, spirituality, and identity. That's what I feel about.
That's right. And then, like, if the readers could remember just one key idea from your chapter, what would you want that to be?
The one idea that I would like the readers to carry with them that silence is not empty. It is full of meaning. It is full of possibility. When we slow down and allow silence, we create a space for reflection. We create a space for peace and even transformation. So that is, I feel that that is one of the important ideas that I want my readers to take from my chapter.
Actually, ma'am, I have like studied your chapter, and I found it like really amazing. It is thoroughly researched. What I found, and we all know like writing can sometimes be challenging. And did you find it difficult to write about this very topic? And if yes, how did you overcome these challenges? I mean, every writer faces obstacles at some point. Like, did you face any particular challenge during your research or writing process?
Yes, it was this is definitely challenging. The first and the most important challenge was to talk about the importance of silence itself in both this culture and mainly interpret this concept into words because after all, silence is something you experience, you feel. It is more of a presence than something can be fully described. So putting that into writing was definitely not easy. And another challenge was bringing two very rich cultures, like the Indian culture and the Japanese culture, and explaining their deep philosophical concepts in a way that is easy to understand, that is simple, and which is clear to the readers. So I overcame this by breaking down these abstract ideas into relatable examples. Like I just gave you the example of a tea ceremony in Japan or the Indian temple rituals. So in that way, the readers will, able to connect with this ideas with this chapter more easily.
Okay, ma'am. So, ma'am, like we all would like to know, like when, like during the process of writing, when you were writing, did you come across or learn something new about culture that surprised you? I mean, was there something that earlier you were totally unaware of, and once you started writing about this book, once you started researching about this very topic, and you suddenly came across it?
So one thing I have definitely learned from my chapter is this concept that I'm focusing on, say silence, stillness, or pause. Often we see them in a more of a negative way, but this is not or we associate it with emptiness or loneliness often. But instead, what I have learned that instead of seeing it as a negative and more negative way, we can see it in a more creative way. So that really changed my own perspective on how I approach this, quiet moments of my life. So from learning from both these cultures, I definitely learn something new as well.
Okay, ma'am. So now let's talk about the perspectives. I mean, if someone disagrees with your ideas that you present in your chapter, what would you want them to consider before they form their ideas?
So my chapter shows that culture is not just about words or music or art. Like often when we talk about culture, any culture, the first thing comes about the music part or dances or the traditions or the art. But yes, all those also form an important part of culture, no doubt. But it is also about the spaces between or the pauses or the stillness. by looking at the silence in Buddhist culture, the concept of silence in Buddhist culture, people can understand that culture communicates in many ways. Even without even culture communicates, it can be communicated in silence or stillness.
Okay, ma'am. And like from your point of view, how does culture shape the people see themselves and like others around them? How does culture affect people's like thought process and all?
So culture gives us a lens to see the world. For example, in Japan, uh, the concept of this silence or this concept of stillness is a way of showing respect and awareness of beauty. In India, silence is connected more with discipline, meditation, and spirituality. So these cultural values influence how people relate themselves and how they treat others.
Okay, ma'am. So now looking at a bigger picture, what do you think is the most important lesson we can learn by studying culture?
So the biggest lesson we can learn from studying culture, uh, no matter where they come from, are the biggest lesson is that culture is connected by shared values. For example, different cultures may develop unique rituals, unique art forms, or philosophies, but at the core, they are often deal with the same question about life, or about death, or about harmony, beauty, or the meaning of life. Japan and India, for example, may express this differently, but both point towards balance, towards self-awareness, and spiritual depth. So, studying culture shows us that diversity and universality uh, exist side by side. So, it teaches us to respect the differences and while also recognizing the common thread that unite the different cultures.
And one more important thing, ma'am, like sometimes the writers have to leave things out. I mean, in this very case, the authors were asked to limit their chapters up to 6,000 words, right? So, like, it's not possible that the authors can write each and everything in detail. So, I mean, if you could add one or more story or example that didn't make into your current chapter, what it would be and why?
Yes, absolutely true. When I was studying about this chapter, I came across so many examples, but again, it was not possible to include everything. So one thing that I remember now that I would have loved to include the example of Matri Mandir in Auroville, India. So what is this? It is a meditation space built around my concept that I have written about, which is silence and stillness, and it combines modern architecture with our ancient ideas, that is meditation or say yoga, for instance. So it would have shown that how these traditions still continue today. So I would have loved to explore more about this in detail, but it's not possible. Maybe next time if I get another chance to write about culture again, so maybe I will make sure to include this.
Okay, ma'am. And now we would like to know from you that what, as per your own perspective, like, do you see culture as something that mainly unites people or something that divides people or perhaps both?
Now, I believe that culture has the power to both unite and divide, depending upon how we approach it. On one hand, culture unites us by giving people, shared ideas, shared traditions, languages, and values that create a sense of identity and belonging. So it helps different communities connect and celebrate what they have in common. Like on the other hand, culture can also divide when differences are used to draw boundaries or create, for example, us versus them thing, this kind of thinking. So that is why comparative studies are important. because they allow us to see the common threads across cultures. For example, even though Japan and India are both very different, both find meaning in silence, stillness. When we look at culture with more open-mindedness, they become bridges rather than barriers. So that's what I feel.
Yes, and your examples are totally like relevant to our topic. So, in today's globalized world, do you feel that culture is becoming more uniform or more diverse?
I think globalization has created a very interesting paradox, I would say, because on one hand, culture is becoming more uniform because of technology, social media, and lifestyle make many of our daily practices look similar across the world. For example, the way we use social media or follow global fashion trends or say global food cuisine culture. So it often feels same like everywhere. But at the same time, globalization has also made people more conscious and more proud of their roots because but I have observed that many communities are reviving their old and traditional arts or traditional language, traditional festival, rituals. In a way, they are kind of preserving their identity in a global way. So I would say that culture is not just losing its diversity, if anything. Culture is becoming the more stronger, the diversity is becoming more stronger because people want their unique voices to be seen and heard while still being part of the mm, global community.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am. And uh, many students are curious to learn about culture. I mean, in today's world, uh, I have come across so many people, like students as like professionals. They're curious to learn about culture. Like they want to learn more and more things about our culture, their own culture. And what advice would you like to give them if they want to study it? Like some tips for them.
So I would say that be curious and be open-minded. So don't limit yourself to books alone because culture is something you cannot understand just by reading a book. Obviously, that will help us to gain more theoretical knowledge about any culture, but to actually understand or gain a more deeper perspective of culture, one should observe the different rituals or traditions or the architecture, art, and the daily life of people of a certain culture. Because culture is lived, it is not just written about. And most importantly, we should respect the differences instead of judging them. So we often see many people when they come across a different culture, which is different from their own, they often tend to judge them and compare it with their own culture. So we should not do that. Every culture has their own individuality and we should respect it. And most importantly, we should be open-minded. Only then we will be able to understand in depth about culture.
Actually, ma'am, I have one more good news for you that the book Perspectives on Culture is doing well on Amazon and other platforms. And if the readers, like your readers, could take home just one message from your chapter, what would you want that message to be?
Thank you. That's a great news. Okay, so the main message that I want the readers to take away is that um, silence and stillness, again I'm going to the same thing, are not just empty but full of meaning. If we embrace them, they can bring us peace, clarity, and balance in a world that often feels noisy and overwhelming, especially in today's world where so many things are going around us. So, yes, we should embrace concepts like this.
Okay, and now let's move towards the closing section. Could you share your like experience that you had with LexArcheus Publications? I mean, since you came to know about us and till you received your book, so how was your experience with like working with the LexArcheus Publications?
Yes, so it was a very positive and smooth experience, I will say. Firstly, the publication has given me the opportunity to share my work to a wider audience and supported me throughout the process. And it was encouraging for me to see my research reach beyond that aspect. And it was a very smooth process, I would say, because sometimes it happens that I have to, like I have worked with other publishers as well. So sometimes I have to make calls and calls upon calls to make sure that to get an update about where the book has reached, at what stage it is. So, and sometimes my falls into unanswered. I have no clue on what is going on, when I will get that food. It like they had like sometimes it happens that I was promised the stuff included, but it is past included. I had no received any information about where my book is. So this type of situation can be very distressing for the writer as well because we have invested a lot of time, a lot of hard work into writing the chapter but with LexArcheus Publication, I say that no such thing happened. It was a very smooth experience and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words and for your positive feedback. And like we always try to do better, like we always try to improve our services, and the customer satisfaction is our priority. Now, ma'am, finally, before we close, would you like to tell our audience about your future academic projects or work that you are planning? Like, are you going to publish any solo book?
Yes, I'm definitely planning to publish a solo book, not this year maybe the coming year. So I want to continue working at the intersection of literature, philosophy, and discussion ideas. I'm especially interested in the concepts of existentialism, trauma studies, and religion literature, both Indian literature and global literature. I'd also like my future research to connect story with real human experience, just like my current research does. And I'm also planning a project on the development of railways here in Northeast India. Like we have bullet trains running here, Vande Bharat, and it is one of the state of Northeast India, Mizoram, recently got connected to railways earlier this month. So I believe that it will be an interesting subject to study more about, and hopefully I'll write a book about this solo book, and hopefully I'm planning to publish it next year. I have not started working on it yet. I'm planning on it soon.
Okay, ma'am, all the best for your future projects. And once again, ma'am, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Like it has been a really wonderful conversation, and I'm sure our audience will really enjoy learning from your experiences and reflections. Thank you, ma'am, once again, and we would like to work with you in future also. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It
Thank,
was a really good experience. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks, ma'am.